Alright guys, I'm going to attempt to record myself working a math problem here for a pre-license class. The question is at the bottom of the screen. Essentially, if a buyer is purchasing a home for $225,000, 3.5% down, 3.75% interest rate, closing scheduled October 14th, what are the following expenses paid by the respective parties? Then how much does the buyer have to bring at closing? And I always like to skip to the end and say how much does the buyer like to bring to closing first. So let's get some information out of this. One of the first things we have here is that the purchase price is $225,000. Okay, but we're not going to borrow $225,000. We're only going to borrow. We're putting 3.5% down. So if I simply take 100 minus 3.5, right? Oops, 100 minus 3.5 is 96%. 96.5% is how much I'm actually going to borrow. So I can take 225 times 96.5. I love this percent button, so it's very simple to tell you that I am actually going to be borrowing $217,125, and that is the LA, or loan amount. I'm going to call this the purchase price, PP. Okay, sorry for my sloppy handwriting because it is sloppy, no doubt. Alright, so now we know how much we're going to be lending, or how much we're borrowing. So let's go through the problem and see what other things we need. So the closing is scheduled for October 14th. So that means we're going to do some prorations through October 14th. So let's first of all start with the following expenses that are going to be paid by the typical party. Well, interim interest, so that's interest on the borrower's loan. So as we have learned, mortgage interest and your mortgage payment is paid in arrears. So if we are closing October 14th, then when you go to make your first mortgage payment, October, November, December 1st, you're actually paying November's mortgage and interest. So in order to get us to that point, we have to get square with a month. So we got to figure out who's paying or how we're paying for October. So the attorney will collect our October interest, so that when we go to pay our mortgage payment in December, we will have paid November, and of course October will already be squared. So in order to calculate interest, we take the loan amount, because we only pay interest on the amount we borrowed. So we're going to take the $217,125, and we know we have a mortgage interest rate at 3.75. So if we times that by 3.75, again, I like that percent button, we're going to pay $8,142.18 and some change in interest for the year. But we don't need the whole year, so we can do a couple of different things. I like to divide it by 360 days, because in pre-license, every year has 360 days, every month has 30. So we know then it's going to be approximately 2261 per day. Okay, so now the challenge to that is figuring out the number of days. Prorating is pretty consistent throughout our class. You do have to understand that the bank is greedy, and so the bank always wants interest of the day of closing. So you will also, as borrower, pay interest for October 14th. So then if we take our calendar and we count the days, right? I always like to draw a small calendar, or yeah, I guess it is a calendar. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30, because every month has 30 days. So now, if we're closing on the 14th, right, this is our closing day right here, we are going to pay interest on that day. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 days. So we times our daily rate times 17 days. times 17 is $384.49-ish in prorated interest. All right, so now that we have our interim interest, so this is a buyer expense for interest. Okay, buyer interest. Okay, so now we go on to the next section of the problem. It says interim interest is good. Deed prep. Well, deed prep is a seller charge, so in this case we really don't need it. Survey, that's going to be a charge to the buyer because he's going to pay $400 for the survey. Let's see, an excise tax, that's a seller expense. That's $1 per 500. Take the purchase price divided by 500, and that'll give you your excise. But we don't need that because that's a seller expense. There is 1% loan origination fee. That origination fee, 1%, and we realize, remember our loan amount up here, 217,125 times 0.01. So we're going to pay a $2,171.25 origination fee. Okay, and then we need to also pay some discount points. Well, discount points are, one discount point is 1% of the purchase price, which is also what I just calculated, so I can times that times 2, and we know we're going to pay $4,342.50 in points. Again, if you wanted to do that, that is simply 1% of the loan amount, and there's 2 of them, so times 2. Okay, so that's the discount points. The appraisal is a buyer expense. We're going to pay $350 for the appraisal. And then we also have this $2,500 in taxes. And so now that's the next thing we have to prorate in this problem is our tax bill. Well, it says the property tax bill is $2,500 for the year, and it has not been paid, and we're in October. Well, we know the bill is due in September. So the fact that it has not been paid means we have to pay all $2,500 at closing. The seller will pay their portion for the point that they've lived into up till October 14th, and the buyer will pay every day thereafter. Now, remember, in proration, the interest, the mortgage interest, is the only one that the buyer is going to pay the day of closing. Otherwise, the seller is going to pay the day of closing. So we don't need the seller's portion, we need the buyer's portion to figure out how much they're going to be bringing. So then in order for the buyer to pay their portion of the taxes, they would pay for the days they live in there. Well, they will live in it every day after October 14th through the end of the year. So in order to pay the bill for this year, from October 14th to the end of the year, we've got to figure out how many days the buyer owes for. Well, as we discussed, the seller will pay for the 14th. So if I go back and count my days, the buyer will pay for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16 days. So we have 16 days times the daily rate. Well, how do we figure out the daily rate? Well, we take the $2,500 bill that is for the whole year, and we divide it by 360 days. It's 6.9444 per day. So then we're going to add in the 16 days, or multiply it times 16 days for October. So October is $111.11 for October. Okay. We also have to add in the month of November and December. So you could have done this a couple of different ways. We know that each month has 30 days, right? So I could add 30 for November, plus 30 for December, plus 16 days in October. So now I owe 76 days, right? So if I owe for 76 days total, let's just change that to a 76-day total. And then I've got to figure out our daily rate, 2,500 divide 360. Oops, $2,500 divide 360 days, 6.944. Okay, so if I just take this out, I can figure out the whole month. So now I know 76 days times that amount will give me $527.78. That is the amount of taxes that the buyer will owe for October 15th through the end of the year. So we'll add that to their tab over here for $527.78. $2,176.78. Now we should be able to add these up to figure out how much the buyer is going to have in expenses. So we're going to add the $527.78 plus, we're going to add the $350 plus the $4,342.50 plus $2,171.25 plus the $400 plus $384.49. That gives us $8,176 and let's call it 2 cents. All right. If you're looking at the multiple choice part of this question, which I don't have on the screen, that is not one of your solutions. And Ben, that is not the solution of the answer, because these are the expenses that the buyer has incurred. But we also know they're putting money down. So how much money are they going to have to bring for their down payment? Well, their purchase price is $225, and they're putting 3.5% down, right? So times 225 times 225 times 3.5% means they're going to put $7,875 down payment. So they got to bring the down payment to closing too. So if we add those two things together, plus $8,176.02, then the buyer would or should have to bring $16,051.02 to the closing table. And if our math is right, that is one of the solutions, which I believe this is question 68 from your practice test, and I'm sorry, 69 from your practice test, and that should be one of your answers. So that is how we arrived at the amount needed for the buyer at closing. Hopefully this is helpful, and let me know if you have other questions.